So risk assessment, once you've got all of your hazards lined up, all of your elite stuff we've just been talking about, what you need to do next, the next step in risk assessment, is to consider the risk. If a hazard is anything that causes harm, the risk is simply the likelihood of harm occurring and the severity of harm. So your next step is to work out just how much harm might this hazard cause. And that lets you decide straight away, is it something that we need to fix now? Or is it something that we need to fix on an ongoing basis? Is the level of risk low? Is the level of risk acceptable? We're not looking at getting rid of risk for two reasons. The first one is it's pretty impossible to do. The second one is that it's not always in the best interests of the client to have no risk. If you think about that for a moment, think about why maybe the client needs some risk. My opinion of this is basically that our lives revolve around risk. We need to be allowed to take appropriate risks, because appropriate risk is what makes your life interesting. I'll give you a story about two care homes. They're both in County Durham. I'll keep them anonymous because they're both great. They both work really, really well. One of them is quite a small care home, 5 or 6 residents, the most caring care home in the world, full stop. The residents want for nothing, the staff are brilliant, the place is comfortable, it's warm, everything people want is there for them. They don't have to ask for a cup of tea because it's almost as if the carers know. They've got a sixth sense. The tea arrives as soon as they want it. That all sounds great, but I was talking to one of the ladies in the day room, one of the residents, and the conversation went something like this. I can't do her voice very well, but I'll try. What she was saying to me was this: I wish it was my time. I wish I could go. I wish you could take me. I want to go. I've had enough, you know. And I'm sitting talking to her and listening and thinking, Pet, there's nothing wrong with you. You're old and you've got the usual conditions that go along with that, but you're not in massive amounts of pain. You haven't got massive amounts of medical issues. The only reason that you're fed up, the only reason that you want to go is because you're bored. Because the care home is so caring that everything you want is there. You don't actually need to move a muscle. Everything's provided for you. And sometimes you need some stimulation, and sometimes that stimulation comes from being allowed to take appropriate risks. Contrast with another care home, a little bit bigger, a few miles away. That care home, it's a dementia home, and it is a laugh riot. The residents are everywhere. There's activities going on all the time. There's seated aerobics, there's games with softballs, they've got a Wii with a projector on the wall, they play tennis. The residents wander around. If they want a cup of tea, and if they're able to do it, the staff let them make the tea themselves. They've got a little kitchen they go into, and the residents can go in there and make tea themselves, or they can go in and make tea under supervision. That's all risky stuff. Hot water, walking, slippery surfaces, but it enriches their life and it makes it better. If you looked at the accident books of those two care homes, I would guess that the first one probably had nothing more than a minor little bump, occasionally, every now and again. The second care home, the accident book was probably full of little accidents, little slips and trips and bumps. But if that's all controlled, if that's all risk assessed, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because the payoff is that they have a more interesting life. And this is a concept called positive risk taking. So risk assessment's easy. Is it safe or is it dangerous? Should I do it or should I not? Really, really simple decision. When you factor in positive risk taking, it makes it much more difficult to be able to work out, is it safe or is it not? Because you're thinking about, actually, this activity, there is quite a high level of risk. But you're thinking, does the actual benefit of the activity outweigh the risk? And that's difficult to work out. It's difficult to understand. But when you get it right, what it means is the service user, the resident, the customer, the person has a much, much, much better life, a more enriched life. Positive risk taking leads to independence, it keeps functionality, it keeps people's self-esteem up, it increases their confidence. So moving and handling risk assessment isn't just about safety, it's about benefit as well. It's about not over-egging the pudding, not putting too much support in place, just putting enough support in place. Because what we're really talking about with manual handling, what we're really talking about with caring, is us putting in the effort to give the person an interest in life, give them something to get up for, give them something to do. So risk assessment's often seen as a bit of a pain. Oh no, not again. More writing, more risk assessment, more signing, more dates. But sometimes it's actually a very, very positive thing. The risk assessment that I like the best, the one that goes alongside your care plan risk assessment, is something called the duck assessment. If you've been trained by me before, you'll know the duck assessment. If it walks like a duck, and it looks like a duck, and it quacks like a duck, what is it? Probably. So no matter what your care plan says, no matter what your moving and handling plan says, if your little in your head duck assessment says no, actually we shouldn't be doing this, you're probably right. That's the time to stop. That's the time to ask your supervisor. That's the time to go back to the care plan and check. Because when that little voice in your head's telling you something wrong, it's normally right. We risk assess all day long. We quantify risk, we identify hazards, and we put in place control measures all day long. And that's really what risk assessment is about. Identifying the things with the potential to cause harm, quantifying the amount of harm and the severity, and then finally putting in place a control measure. A control measure which brings the risk down to an acceptable level. Unlike health and safety, where we say it's an acceptable level for you, in moving and handling risk assessment, we're also thinking about, is it an acceptable level for the resident, for the service user? Because that's the level you need to actually think about. I can walk to the town centre and go to a cafe, so therefore that activity is probably pretty safe for me. If somebody has a physical disability, then maybe it's different for them. They would need a different control measure. And that's really what risk assessment is all about.